Warning, if you're not a fan of language that packs a punch, now's the time to tune out. But if you're ready for some real talk, stick around and enjoy the ride.
Hello, Tramelle. I'm so glad to see you today on this rainy day.
Yes, friend, this weather is really weathering out there.
It really is. It's really showing off what it can do. I'm excited to be here with you this morning so that we can talk a little bit about our own experiences with working and parenting and building a business. And I think this is probably a tip of the iceberg conversation because there's a lot to cover there. But I'm really excited to get into what your experience has been and the lessons that you've learned and be able to share some of that with the people who listen to us.
Agreed. I'm also really excited to hear your point of view too, as being a parent who's also an entrepreneur. I feel like we probably have similar experiences, but I know that everybody's dealing with different things, so I'm eager to hear from you as well.
Yay.
So let's see what happens.
Let's jump in.
My name is Tramelle D Jones, and I am a strategic career coach.
I am Bonnie Scott. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Texas.
For women and marginalized communities, work is hard.
Especially at this point in the pandemic and in our lives.
There's such a toxic workplace in most jobs.
Or you're bringing your own trauma history and making decisions from that place.
From the experiences that we're both having individually, now we get to join forces and help the world not have to go through those same pitfalls, right?
We're going to do it with kindness and love for each other and all the women out there doing this hard stuff.
Welcome to the Work and Wellness Podcast. There's a whole bunch of unknowns to the regular population about what it feels like to be a mom and working. Actually, I just had a conversation with a friend of mine. She just had a baby. She was working. She was a client. She was working and not necessarily at a job she liked very much. But she had just gotten married and unexpectedly became with child. And then that position ended. It was one of those happy accidents, right?
Okay.
Where the universe kind of pushes you in a direction because she's an awesome artist. And so after she left that job, she was able to really put her heart and soul into that art, but had a severance package that would kind of pay for her to float that, right? It was amazing.
Oh, nice.
So now that she has had this baby and her and the baby have been home for quite a few months, she's now contemplating going back into the workplace. And her question to me was, I'm not really sure what to do to get back into the workplace. My advice was probably before I even thought to give her advice as a career coach, my first advice to her was, girl, are you sure?
Girl.
Just as another mother, let's start there. Are you sure? Because you're not just talking about bringing in additional income. What you're talking about is the net income of what you give away once you pay for somebody else's house, which we call childcare.
Yep.
The amount of money we pay for childcare. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things we don't talk about as mothers. I'd say parents, yes, but as mothers specifically. What was your experience?
Yeah, I mean the financial cost of childcare and the emotional cost of juggling and balancing and feeling like, oh, I want to do this job because I care about it and it's exciting, and that's a trade-off with spending time with my kid. And I mean, there's just a lot of emotional and financial aspects to being a parent who works and needs childcare.
What do you think the hardest thing was for you in that time?
When I first had her, to be able to stay home with her for as long as I wanted to, I had to use every minute of my sick and vacation time, first of all. And so at some point I just ran out of that and I had to go back. And I remember that feeling really icky. Like, oh, well, this is the choice, right? You got to go back. If you're not going to quit your job, you got to do this. And so she stayed home with Matt for a few days without me. And I think that was really important for them. You know, there was plenty of days she stayed with me while he went to work. But she stayed home with him for a few days. And I remember just sitting in my office and crying because I wanted to be home, but also I was doing a job that I really cared about. You know, I was part of a great team. We were doing like sex education and pregnancy prevention work, and it was really challenging and fun and involved me in the community. And so there was a lot to love about that, which was enough to help me sort of push through, but it was rough. And then at 6 weeks, I think, no, she didn't start daycare then. She started at 3 months. She went to daycare, and that was hard too, because then it was like, you're pumping, you're taking diapers, you're doing all this, and you're handing your baby off to this lovely woman. I mean, Miss Tammy was amazing, but it's hard to like drop them off and leave them there. And so that first year probably was pretty tough. And then she was sick all the time, and I didn't have any sick time because I had taken it all for maternity leave. So that was always rough too, having to like negotiate with my boss. Like, I'm sorry, she has a fever. We can't. What do I do? I mean, all of that added up is a lot.
Definitely, it is a lot.
Hey, this is Bonnie, and I want to take a minute to talk to you about my business, which is Mindful Kindness Counseling, LLC. It's a private therapy practice in San Antonio, Texas. It's a huge part of who I am, a huge part of my life. I'm really proud of the work that I do and the way that it reflects my values and supports my community. So I want you to know that my business is there. If you're looking for a therapist, if you're looking for a supervisor, if you're hoping for support or networking, let me know how I can support you, because there is plenty of work to go around and I want all of us to be successful. So reach me at Bonnie Scott LPC at gmail.com. Yeah.
So,
what about you? What was your experience like in those early days?
Very similar. So let's talk about the build up to this, right? Because I don't think many people talk about this. I did a lot of research. So I planned my pregnancy. I was on birth control. Jasmine's father and I were together and had decided, this birth control situation, we may want to get pregnant, and if so, when's the best time? We decided a time, took it out. We were told that it would be 6 months before I got pregnant. That didn't happen. It was a month. But in that time prior to us taking it out, I had done all this research about like, what did I need to do cost wise if I was going to be out of work? How was I going to pay for this doctor? Just all these things, right?
Yeah.
You know me, I'm like a research nerd. So for me, I purchased short-term disability insurance before we knew we were interested. So I went ahead and got it, because they don't let you get it but once a year, right? You can only elect to purchase short-term disability insurance, but during that one time a year. So prior to, I signed up for that. Then we got pregnant, had her. I did the same thing. I worked till the very last moment. And I even worked it out so that like doctor's appointments, I only took during lunch breaks. I worked extra to make sure that I didn't take extra time. I mean, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, came to work sick. Did everything I could not to take time off.
Yeah.
Because everything I had needed to be used towards my pregnancy. I worked up until about a week prior to delivery, and I got sick. I went to the doctor. They held me in the hospital for about a week. I was at the office and I had an appointment, and I told my doctor, I'm going to go to my appointment. And she was like, I don't know if you need to come back. And I was like, for most people, I imagine that experience would be a load off, right? They're okay if I leave. Do you know the amount of terror that went through my mind, thinking to myself, well, wait a minute, I haven't delivered. Do you know how much time I've saved up? This is going to eat into that time. Now I'm going to have less time at home with baby. Oh gosh. So I was out a week prior to delivery because I got sent home from my doctor's appointment and they said I needed to go home and not go back to work. I stayed in the hospital for maybe about 2 or 3 days. Norma called me while I was in the hospital and was like, don't come back to work. And I was like, okay. So then I had her a week later. I stayed home. I want to say I had already told them I would stay home for 6 weeks. That was going to be what I envisioned, enough time, money-wise, I would be okay. And then emotionally, I felt like I would be prepared. It wasn't enough time.
No.
I took an additional 2 weeks with no pay because I just couldn't leave her. At that time, I was by myself because we had broken up. And I was staying with my parents. So my parents were helping me, but emotionally, I just was not ready to leave my daughter. So I ended up staying away for 2 whole months. And it was a whirlwind when it came to the financial planning for that, the time off planning for that, finding daycare for a newborn.
Right. A lot of places won't even take a baby before 6 weeks. And so you at least have to get time off or coverage of some kind until you can even take them to an official daycare. Yeah.
Exactly. So I imagine that a lot of people are going to probably have to have either in-home where it's one of the unit, either mom or dad or somebody who is staying home with that child, or they have a trusted family member who will stay home with that child until they hit the allotted age that they can take them to daycare if they can afford daycare.
Right.
The highest price point at your daycares is going to be your newborns. The woman who I had this conversation with earlier about like, well, should I go back to work? That's the first thing I asked her. I was like, have you priced out daycare? Do you have a family friend who will watch your child, or are you going to be working just to pay daycare? Yeah. And she was like, well, we had somebody, but that fell through. So now it would be daycare. And I was like, I would just do some really good shopping around because it's extremely expensive.
Yeah.
For daycare.
Yeah. Well, and like quality early childhood education should be expensive, right? Like those people are experts and professionals, and it's hard to know if that's what you're getting at just any daycare, right? Like they don't necessarily have credentialing or whatever. And so, yeah, if you don't know somebody who sends a kid there, it's hard to get that insight. And so even that I feel torn on, right? Because like those people work hard, they're professionals, and that is important stuff. And is there any way to make it cost a little bit less and still everybody gets paid? I don't know what the answer is.
I agree with you 100%. Like I want to make sure that the person who is basically devoting their entire time to my child and other children is well compensated, is well educated, and is doing a great job, right? And there is really no meter at that age group to say how good of a job they can or should or would do. The way that I found my daycare is I toured a couple of places, but then I just started relying on friends to tell me about people that they had dealt with. We found a woman who seemingly was amazing. I went and sat with her for an hour while I just peeped stuff out, and she was great. Eventually her adult children moved back home, and it just became overwhelming. So we moved her to an actual daycare facility, and then the facility was great, but the way that I soothed my thought process around sending her every day was to just become really great friends with the staff and just to treat them really great. That I believe that's really important for you to get the kind of information that you need. And no matter where you take your child, regardless if it's at home or if it's like, an actual facility, there's always going to be something that happens. And the fact that you aren't there is what makes it hard.
Yeah.
Hey friends, I'm Tramelle. If you didn't know, I run a career planning firm called TDJ Consulting. I focus on working with high achieving women, and you know exactly the ones I'm talking about. She's the go-to employee, she's consistent, she's reliable, and everyone goes to her for help. It usually means that she's doing her work and theirs too. But unfortunately, her bank account doesn't reflect all the extra effort that she's putting in. I help those high achieving women leverage their wins at work to boost their salary by $10,000 to $20,000. I provide career services that build on those successes that they've already accomplished without requiring them to go back to school. If you're curious, let's talk. Schedule a free call at tdjconsulting.com. I agree with you what you said earlier. Having a job that you really care about is also important. Like, I was working in a position that I absolutely love. I felt it was my dream job. I still consider it to be the best job I've ever had. We were doing the type of work that gave me creative autonomy. I was growing. Our team was amazing and supportive. I didn't want to leave that. I wasn't in a place where I could, honestly. I had to work. There was no choice there. In order to afford to live, I had to work. And then eventually,
well, that's how you get health insurance and all of that kind of stuff too, right? And a baby needs freaking health insurance.
Man, of all of us, these children need health insurance. I agree. So it was hard to. I think we talked about this on another episode where there was a big shift for me. I did have to go and tell my boss, hey, up until this point, I've been doing this, this, and this. And I just want to give you a heads up to know that I can't show up in that way anymore simply because I'm a mom now and I'm needed in other areas. But I was really strategic about also offering other areas where I could show up more so that it didn't seem like there was just no go and don't depend on me anymore, you know? But that also was really hard because some of the things I gave up were some of the things I really enjoyed. A lot of the stuff we did after hours and trips we took with the youth and just stuff I really loved. I had to sit back and watch as everybody else filed off and did those things. And I was no longer included. So that's hard too.
Yeah. And for us, so I had Audie in the spring, and then that fall, Matt started graduate school. We had intended for him to put it off a year, and then for what he wanted to do, he couldn't. And so we have this 6-month-old baby, and he was not available, right? As he should be when you're doing a graduate program. I mean, it was intense. It was through a prestigious college. It was intense. And so that's when I think about how that is the only time I have felt close to my marriage being over. He and I have been together for going on 20 years at this point. And that 2-year gap of we have a newborn, he's in school, I'm trying to work. I mean, we just fought all the time because we just couldn't understand each other. We were coming from such different places. And the result of that too was that I often had to take my kid to work stuff, where we worked as a case manager, you were required. If there's an after hours thing, you need to be there. I just took my kid. If it's safe enough for me and it's safe enough for these clients, it's got to be safe enough for this toddler. So
I remember us bringing our daughters to after hours things that were required of staff. Yeah. I think that's where they first met. But yeah, I don't think people realize that there is going to be a shift in your relationship when you have a child, regardless of what parents are doing. I hate to hear that you two had to go through that, but I'm so glad to see that you stuck through it. But I believe that there was a shift in my relationship through my pregnancy that led to us ending things. But inevitably, I'm very thankful that Jasmine has the father that she has. He loves her more than anything. And I can see that in his eyes every time that they are together. But our dynamic shifted a lot after, she was here. And I think that's something people don't necessarily prepare for or even know that will exist or happen.
Or how to prepare for it, right?
Yeah, how do you? Are people even talking about this, right?
Yeah.
Like I did a lot of research on the things I thought to prepare for, but I did not know that I should even consider a shift in a relationship with my partner, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, podcast listener, this is Bonnie jumping in on this little break in the action to talk to you about advertising opportunities for this season of the podcast. So, my business, Mindful Kindness Counseling, is really proud to support this podcast and these conversations, both with my time, but also financially. And Tramelle and I want you to know that we are open to your advertising needs as well. So if you're interested in funding a spot on the podcast, please feel free to contact us at workandwellnesspodcast@gmail.com. Bye.
Yeah.
I think the other shift that no one tells you also is that the life you had as a childless woman is not the life you have as a mother.
No.
So I have a few friends who are going through that transition now where they are now a mother and they're mourning the loss of their past life.
Yeah.
In a way that feels like there's a huge loss, but there's so much to gain. I had to tell one of my friends, listen, you might want to sit down for this because I'm going to give you some news. The life you had before your child is not coming back.
No.
But there are so many pluses that come with having a child. I believe that there's a renewed thought process that comes with having a child. I also am not traditional in the sense that, like, I think you have to shut your life down. I think you can still be, your fun and sassy self and be a parent. I try my best to be an example of that. I have friends who are like, I didn't even realize that you were a mom. Well, I don't know how, because I talk about her all the time.
I know. But, I'm obsessed with her, but okay.
But in the sense that, like, I don't let the fact that I'm a mom mean that I can't be places, do things, and grow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So some lifestyle bloggers will show you a side of motherhood that is very much, now I am all about the children. My life no longer exists, only in the sense that I need to be the perfect mom. But I believe it's really also important to nurture yourself, because the way you treat yourself is how you're modeling your child to treat themselves and to treat others.
Yep.
There's so much fun and excitement that comes with being a parent. These questions these babies be asking, okay? And do you know how many times I have tried to figure out how to say I don't know, but not say I don't know? I don't know. So my go-to answer with all the questions my daughter asks is, well, what do you think?
Yeah, girl. Oh my God. A couple weeks ago, she read something on a tabloid, like at HEB in the line, and she was like,
oh no.
Why does the royal family not include Prince Andrew? Why is he ostracized? And I was like, I don't, it's like 6:30 in the morning. I don't want to have to explain. Please. So my go-to has become, I will tell you, but you can't unknow it. Whatever I'm about to tell you, if you decide like, oh God, I wish I didn't know that, it's too late. So sometimes she will be like, oh, okay, no, if you think that, I don't want to know yet. But other times she will push, and it's like, okay, how do I explain Prince Andrew? Here we go, getting into this over Pop-Tarts. Let's do it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a new and different experience that life brings, and that, you can't look at it as a downer. You really have to look at it as, the next big adventure. But I see a lot of women losing themselves as mothers. I worry about that.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's this resurgence after the child becomes, old enough that they're now about to leave, and then you're like, I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
That's a long time to put yourself in the back burner, and then you wonder why your child also has a hard time putting themselves first. Well, here we go.
Yeah.
But I think even now, like, so my experience now is being a mom and being an entrepreneur. I think there's highs and lows. What's been your experience? Because, I mean, I feel like I'm going to gather some thoughts because I have so many. What are your thoughts about being a mom and an entrepreneur? And does it differ from the experience you were having as a mom who worked for, you know, a more rigid schedule?
I think what I learned sort of early on and has served me well is you're not going to be good at all of it. And so some of it was letting go of some perfectionism, right? Like coming into this place of good enough. And sometimes that goes to your efforts at work. And sometimes that's about keeping your house tidy or getting all the laundry put away. Or, you know, sometimes you just have to give yourself that wiggle room of like, this is good enough. And what I decided early on too was just to be really mindful about mindful or compartmentalized, interchangeable, of like when I'm at work, and this is the person I am here. And maybe, you know, a little bit of masking almost of like, this is who I am here. And it's not that I don't talk about her, I don't think about her. It's just that the cats are fighting now. I should always just be at the office. I don't know why I try to stay at my house. You know, if I'm at work, I'm at work. And if I'm at home with her, I'm here at home with her. I'm not checking my email. I'm not doing that stuff. And so giving that expectation to a boss when you work somewhere more rigid, or setting that expectation for myself as an entrepreneur, right? Like as a person who works for myself, I could work 7,000 hours a week. But I have to choose to put that boundary and be really present and mindful with her. And then when she goes to bed, I put that effort into my partner and making sure that I'm taking good care of that relationship. And you have to find times throughout the day to build that in for yourself. And so it looks really different, I think, for everybody. But the key to that is this like good enough space. You're just not going to be perfect at all of it. And that's okay. If you're doing your best, that's probably enough.
I love that. I think it gets back to this, my redefinition of balance. I don't believe balance exists in the way that we think it does. I don't think it's something we ever achieve. I think it's just something that we play towards. And that balance also points to the fact that you don't win at everything.
Yeah.
Everything is not going to be on the up and up.
Yeah.
Balance means that you choose some things over others, specific to the time and need of all the things that you were tasked to do.
Yeah.
So it means that sometimes I'm going to have to put my clients to the side. In my calendar, I have time marked for Jazzy. It's called Jazzy time. She knows that I have time in my calendar marked as Jazzy time. And so because I've been really thoughtful about sharing that with her, it keeps me honest and spending intentional time with her. We also create, you know, flex time in our schedule where we can go and take adventures, but she knows that it's possible I may get a client during that time.
Okay.
The way that I've really gone about creating an entrepreneurial life that also allows for me to be the kind of mother I want to be echoes what you're talking about, but it has been to be honest with all the people who I come in contact with. I build my daughter into my brand so that people understand from day one, I'm a mom. Yes, I'm your coach, but I'm also a mom. It means that you may get a message from me at last minute that my daughter's sick and I've got to go get her from school. And then because of that, I am canceling our appointment. And because people know from jump that I'm a mother, it means that expectation is softened. But if I never share with people that I am a mother, it is going to seem very insensitive if out of nowhere I am, you know, breaking appointments, with no kind of explanation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I build my daughter into my brand so that people see me as a mother and understand when there are times I have to be a mother over being your coach.
Yeah.
Another thing is I have also had to come to grips with the fact that I can't do everything the best.
Yeah.
Right? The great thing about it is if I can plan far enough ahead, I can do things really well. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with really well.
Yeah.
And again, I haven't said this today, so I won't say again. But the biggest thing that I think helps me is asking my community for help. I've had my parents on a rotation of 1 to 2 days where they pick her up from school so that I can take late client calls. Or if I need to go and speak somewhere, I know that I can call them to help with her. But because they already have 1 day a week, it's not going to be a huge blow to her schedule to be with my parents if ever there is an emergency, right?
Yeah.
So asking for help is huge, not feeling like you have to be perfect. And then, of course, building your motherhood into your brand allows for people to get that things are going to come up. And I hope that you have, some grace for that.
Yeah. Especially because we do work that supports women, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you're right that if I'm working with another woman, I want her to know that I have a daughter. She's an important part of my life. Many of the funny stories that I have to break the ice with people are going to revolve around things that she said and done, right? To be able to have that relationship with her and have it as sort of a central piece of working with other women, I think gives other women permission to bring their whole self into the work too. And that feels really important also. And you're right that because we are entrepreneurs, my business is me. I am the face. I am the person that does everything from end to end.
Yeah.
And so she has to be built into that because that it's me, And so, sometimes she has to spend a day at the office, and I do make her clean and water the plants so that I can give her a paycheck, right? So that she can be my little employee and understand that what we're building as entrepreneurs is a family business and a family legacy, and she's going to have to be part of that in very tangible ways and in relationship and branding and all of that.
Exactly. If we wrapped up today, what do you think would be the top 2 pieces of advice that you give mothers who are working or are also entrepreneurs?
The main thing that works for me is, like you were saying, is having a very transparent schedule. And so here on the fridge next to me is our schedule for October. It has on there everywhere everybody's supposed to be every day. And so if anyone in the house needs to look, they know. They can look right there and see oh, today mom is doing this and then I have dance at this time or whatever. I think you need a very transparent schedule because that's where you get some of that mindful compartmentalizing, right? Of the separations and where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are really important. I would say that the second thing should be that don't lose yourself.
Yeah.
As a woman, you are still who you are at the core. My biggest advice to parents when it comes to trying to figure out, well, how am I still going to make time for the things I have to do and to be a parent and be present? Bring your children with you. That is in all things. My daughter helps me cook. When she was young, I would sit her down with me and we would fold laundry together. Have your kids do things with you. The suggestion I gave to the artist friend that I'm mentioning is I said to her, don't feel like you have to only have time away from her doing your art, get out on the floor and give her a piece of paper while you do your art right there on the floor with her. We don't have to, if we're always trying to carve out time to be this other self away from our children, you will run out of time.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to merge those things. So be your full self in front of your kids. I mean, I don't know, maybe full self is too much. Maybe some people aren't that person. But the point being is you don't have to try and make time for these dualities in every scenario. There's a lot of things that you can do with your kids that allows you to maintain self and get the things done that you need so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming in the end of the day.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that it is. And also just practically, like you were saying, the life you had before is not coming back. What you need to know is that anything that you used to be able to do in like a in and out kind of scenario is never happening again. So yes, take your kid with you and do the things you need to do, but build that time in because they don't care what your time limits are. They have zero
sense of urgency.
They have no urgency, and they don't understand this, like, okay, we're running in CVS for something that should take 5 minutes, and then you're in there 20 minutes later because they're wandering and looking. And you just have to build that time in and understand that that's part of the currency.
Agreed. Well, this has been a great chat with you, friend. I appreciate it. I love that our kids get to experience each other. Like, I think that your daughter is amazing. I love when they play together. They have such a good time. Yeah. But I also, I agree with so many of the points that you're making as far as motherhood goes. Let's hear from you guys. Like, what all are you guys doing as far as parenthood when it comes to being an entrepreneur or working outside of the home? What are your tips for getting all of the things done? Right? What are your parenting tips? And are there any places that we should be going or people we should be listening to about this topic? Hope to hear from you.